and that great tie he has on. I see a couple more out there. It's a real pleasure for me to be here representing myself. I represented the Bureau of Reclamation for many, many years, and it was a great pleasure for me to do that. And I'm just so honored to have been asked to be here and to be a part of this program today. It's a huge accomplishment. Man, you just look at that. Isn't that a beautiful sight out there with that lined canal? And you can't help but think back of all the difficulties that we had in getting it lined. I had the pleasure about 2 years ago of dedicating the completion of the lining of the Coachella Canal. And during that dedication, I had an opportunity to tell a little story, and I'd like to kind of build on that a little bit. And this may be the only thing you remember me for here in this presentation today, but I have moved to Arizona. I'm happy to say I'm living in the Scottsdale area. And shortly after I moved there, I was driving down with my wife one night. It was in the evening, and a policeman stopped me. He came up to the door and said, your tail light's out. And I said, oh, officer, I'm so sorry. I'll get that fixed right away. He says, okay. And he turned around and started to walk back, and my wife tapped me on the knee and says, Robert, I told you a month ago to get that tail light fixed. And the unfortunate policeman heard her. And so he comes back, and he says, gee, can I see your driver's license? So I took out my driver's license, and he took a look at it, and he says, well, this is an out-of-state driver's license. And he says, and it's expired. And I said, oh, officer, I'm going to the DMV tomorrow to get a new license. I promise. And so he said, okay, and he handed me the license back, and my wife tapped me on the knee again and says, I told you to get that license renewed a month ago. So the officer came back and started talking to me again and said, gee, I'm going to have to write that. Please, officer, don't do that. I said, I promise I'll get the license. He finally says, okay, thanks a lot. And I turned to my wife and says, now, would you be quiet? And the officer heard me say that. He came back and stuck his head in it. He says, ma'am, does he always talk to you that way? And my wife says, only when he's drinking. Let me just say that is not a true story. But I have a true story. I did go to the DMV in Arizona to get my driver's license. And, you know, you go in and you're filling out all the stuff on your driver's license, and, you know, height, weight, eye color, hair color. And I get it all filled out, and I give it to the lady. And she's going through it and checking. She got down there, and all of a sudden she's scratching something off and writing something else. I says, what's wrong? She says, your hair's not brown, it's gray. That's a true story. And I'll show you the driver's license if you don't believe me. But hey, look, it is such a pleasure to be here. And I know I'm the last speaker, and I promise not to be long. But there's just a couple of things that I thought I might highlight. And this has been such a long road. You know, everybody talks about how long it took. The Bureau of Reclamation started studying the canal lining project in the early 1980s. And in fact, Congress enacted legislation authorizing the construction of this project in 1988. So it's over 20 years since the Congress actually authorized and said we ought to build this project. And so much occurred in that 20-year period in order to get this done. One of the first things that occurred is the legislation happened to tie the settlement of the San Luis Rey water settlement to water supply associated with the All-American Canal. And let me tell you what, that really upset a lot of the water interests in California, because now here was a new demand being placed on this project that everybody in California was counting on. We spent about 10 years looking for another water supply for the San Luis Rey tribe, in cooperation with the San Luis Rey tribe. We're never able to do it. We finally incorporated them into the project, and let me tell you what, they became a very important and valuable partner in getting this project done, because when we were having all of the difficulty in getting past all the issues, we had an Indian tribe, we had a trust responsibility in the Interior Department that gave us another reason why we had to be tenacious and stay with getting this project completed. I think that added significantly to to the interests of the Interior Department. So congratulations to the San Luis Rey. And I could probably talk an hour of all the things that occurred during the negotiations with the tribe. The QSA has been mentioned. This canal was an important part of the QSA. I really have to take my hat off to the state of California because they stepped up at a critical time. There was a big dispute, believe it or not, between San Diego and Metropolitan over wheeling water in the canal. And to the state's credit, they stepped up, the state legislature stepped up and authorized $200 million to build this canal. And I'll tell you, if that hadn't happened, I'm not sure we would be here today. That made a huge difference to the partners and the cost of the water for San Diego and Metropolitan and the tribe and everybody else that was involved in it. So, and you know, I need to recognize another person that was involved in that that's not with us anymore, Dave Kennedy. One of Lester's predecessors was very much involved in that effort. And then I can't talk about this without saying some of the issues that we had internationally with the country of Mexico. We had strong objections from Mexico. The Mexican Congress actually passed an act that identified the two major issues between the United States and the country of Mexico. One of them was immigration. The second one was the lining of the All-American Canal. This was a subject and a project that actually got talked about between the two presidents of the two countries, not once, but 2 or 3 times. So there was a long, extended process of consultation with the country of Mexico, and we're still having those. In fact, there's consultation and discussions that are still going on. My guess is we're going to find ways to accommodate a lot of Mexico's concerns with cooperative agreements in the future. But that was something that really was a challenge for us to work through. Then, the environmental. We all mentioned that we had litigation. We had environmental groups that sued over impacts of the wetlands, even cross-border impacts. It was very significant litigation. We got a very favorable ruling in a district court on that litigation. But it went to the Ninth Circuit, and the Ninth Circuit had ruled on it, but they did issue an injunction. The project was actually held up for a period of time. Who steps in to solve that problem? Congress. Congress passed a law telling the Secretary of the Interior to move forward and get this project completed without regard to any other law. That is very, very significant for the Congress to take that kind of action. And that ended the litigation. And about 3 months later, construction of the project started. And then construction is an accomplishment in and of itself. All of the engineering and issues and just looking at the canal, congratulations to all the engineers that were involved. You know, we recognized a lot of people that were a part of this and no longer with us. I'd added Dave Kennedy. I'd also add Dennis Underwood, who was involved in this project as the Executive Director of the Colorado River Board of California, as Commissioner of Reclamation, and during this period of time when he was with the Metropolitan Water District. So Dennis is another person that you remember. And I think if all those people were here with us today, they'd all be saying, they'd be celebrating with us and they'd all be saying, job well done. So thank you very much for inviting me and job well done. Thank you, Bob. Before we conclude the program, I'd like to give a special thanks to the key contractors who contributed funds to help cover the cost of this event. So we'd like to express our appreciation to Kiewit Pacific, GEI, and Parsons. And if there are any, are there any representatives of those 3 contractors, if you'd stand up. There's some. There they are. I'd like to thank you all for coming, and a special thank you for those who traveled several hours to get here. It's a real tribute to this project, and also, once again, demonstrates this a spirit of cooperation.
Now I would like to invite James King, Mark Watton, Carl Wirkus, Lester Snow, and Bob Johnson to go over to the canal